Today we are seeing a huge change in payment technology, whether it's digital convergence or cryptocurrencies. There's a huge opportunity in Asia, and so it's very important for us to look and understand what are the real benefits that are being put into the system by these new technology.
Oh, so you want to talk about the benefits of Bitcoin. That's awesome. I know all of these. There's privacy, security.
If you're a consumer or a merchant, a government, even a financial services provider, what's really critical is that what you're putting into the marketplace is solving a need for a customer and it's trusted.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's just basic business acumen. Of course, you need people to actually want your product, and then you need to also be able to reliably provide said product and be a name that people will trust for. You know what? I think you're using trust in a different way than I am.
Trust and security, a stable form of value, are incredibly critical if you're going to be able to get acceptance for the services that you're looking to provide.
There's that trust word again. I have the feeling by the end of this video that is going to be like the mother of all dead horses that you are continuing to beat. But I want to address real quick that you seem to be going into the volatility argument, which actually isn't really much of an argument anymore. Bitcoin's about as stable as it ever has been right now, and we have good multiple years worth of data suggesting that that's not going to change anytime soon, and that as a matter of fact, greater stability is probably coming in the future.
The challenge with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin is that they're unstable in terms of their intrinsic value.
Yeah, okay, we're doing the volatility thing.
They don't offer perhaps the recourse that consumers are naturally expecting that come from using cash in the day-to-day.
All right, this one's at least a little bit fair. There is kind of a lack of consumer protection options right now. But in fairness, in the 50s through 70s, when the credit card industry was first getting its start, there was a pretty substantial lack of consumer protection options back then, too. You had to build your stuff, we have to build our stuff. We're working on it.
And they're also there to serve a purpose that's not necessarily completely clear.
Oh, there's a purpose, and it's a clear one. We'll get to that in a minute.
Let me give you an example.
Oh, please, please give us an example.
Bitcoin and a lot of the concerns related to Bitcoin are because they are looking to guarantee anonymity.
Really? Really? I mean, first volatility and now anonymity. Okay, so volatility, non-issue. Anonymity, also kind of non-issue. Also technically not anonymity, it's pseudonymity. Everything's identified and traceable, just not necessarily in a way that's directly connected to your real actual name and identity information. You can, sure, use Bitcoin anonymously if you're a little bit clever and you understand what you're doing and how the technology works. If you're willing to work at it, you can achieve a degree of anonymity. But you can also achieve the exact opposite. If you're a charity who needs to publish their books or a financial institution trying to prove your reserves, you can just publish your Bitcoin address. It works in both directions. Also, there are some of us who would say that anonymity really means privacy, and that that's not a bad thing.
Essentially electronic cash, if you will. And what MasterCard is critically looking at is how can we move to this world beyond cash? How do we actually use electronic payments to combat and combat the inefficiencies of cash and really create a much more transparent and inclusive financial system?
Well, yeah, I mean, physical cash does kind of suck, but that's mostly because it's physical. I mean, physical cash it's heavy in large quantities, it's hard to move places, it's fragile, you can tear it, you can burn it. Physical cash is filthy, covered in cocaine and awful, horrible germs and dirt and things. I used to count a lot of physical cash for a living, and my hands would be black at the end of the day. Physical cash is horrible. I will completely agree with you on that point.
If you really want to do that, it's quite hard to understand what the appeal is of a cryptocurrency when that currency is really essentially electronifying cash. It seems to be pretty inefficient.
Oh, right. So you want a transparent, efficient monetary system. Great. Dissolve your company. Look, the problems with cash are because it's physical. And when you take away that physicality, when you electronify cash into something like Bitcoin, those problems go away. If I want to send someone value with Bitcoin, if I want to send them money, we exchange information, none of which is identifiable or sensitive in any way, and I fill out a form, click a button, and send the money. Exactly the same as if I'd handed them a $20 bill or something. Comparatively, your system requires me to hand highly sensitive information over to a merchant who then forwards it to a merchant services company, which is probably just a reseller for a larger merchant services company. The merchant services company then forwards that information to my bank, who either approves or declines the charge, and then all of that information gets passed backwards through that chain back to the merchant. Later, that evening probably, that merchant will finalize that transaction, probably for the same dollar amount, but not necessarily, and they'll do that through that entire communications chain again, and then my bank and the merchant's bank will actually settle, will actually move the funds between our accounts, usually via a third settling bank. That's totally efficient.
Innovation in payments, and frankly any industry, is critically important to maintaining a healthy, competitive environment and driving improvements in experiences for consumers and businesses.
Well, of course innovation is good. That's why you should try doing some. If everything else about MasterCard moved at the same pace as the actual technology, MasterCard's logo would be harvest gold and avocado green, and painted on the hood of a 1970 AMC Gremlin.
Innovation is something critically important to what MasterCard does, and MasterCard is particularly focused on ensuring that we're delivering safe, simple, smart solutions to consumers.
Right, safe and simple. That's why credit card fraud is completely non-existent, and every transaction doesn't require 6 middlemen. Wait. Oh, and smart? Really? Really? You want to challenge Bitcoin on smart? You want to challenge a peer-to-peer distributed system based on heavy cryptography that solves, even partially, a decades-old, unsolvable computer science problem. Even partially. You want to go up against that for smart. You think MasterCard's smarter than that? Really? Because I'm not seeing evidence.
When we look at the markets across the world, 85% of the world's retail transactions are cash.
Wait, so you're telling me that not even MasterCard, but the entire credit card industry as a whole has at best a 15% market share worldwide? Well, why hasn't your smart, safe, innovative solution caught on globally then? Maybe because there's a lot of developing nations that don't have the infrastructure to support all of those middlemen? Or maybe it's because all of those middlemen take a cut, and that seems reasonable when we're talking about a relatively wealthy American family buying their second TV. But it seems less reasonable when we're talking about poor people in developing nations buying the scant amount of rice they need to make sure that their family doesn't starve. Maybe.
So what we're trying to ensure is that we are building compelling, interesting, secure, and convenient payment solutions that encourage merchants, consumers, governments, and other participants in the financial system to move to adopt electronic payments.
Well, yeah, I mean, we want electronic payments too. That's why we're building this whole system. I'm sorry it's kind of a threat to your existing model. Maybe if you'd built it better?
With a big increase in internet traffic, convergence with mobile and everything digital, there's huge interest in cryptocurrencies and what perhaps they could create in the marketplace.
Well, yeah, of course there's a lot of interest. It's a whole new paradigm. It's an unsolved computer science problem being solved. That tends to generate interest. When you innovate, you get attention. You should try that.
Now, we at MasterCard are not completely comfortable with the idea of cryptocurrencies, largely because they go against the whole principle that we've established our business on.
Refusing to streamline your payment system to preserve your insane predatory profit margin?
Which is really moving to a world beyond cash.
Oh, right. World beyond cash. Gotcha.
And ensuring greater transparency and security and simplicity in the way people live their lives.
Well, except for the part where Bitcoin is actually better than your system at all of those things. Simplicity is maybe a little arguable from the user standpoint, but that's because we're new. You're still basically working at the protocol level when you use Bitcoin today. Usability's improved a long way in a few years, and it's going to keep getting better. Maybe that's why you're so upset about this whole thing, is because our problems with your system are systemic and would require you to rebuild the whole thing from the ground up to fix, whereas your problems with our system are things that are actually in progress towards being fixed.
If you think about it, cash is a problem for a number of countries. Cash really facilitates anonymity, it facilitates illegal activity, it facilitates tax avoidance, and a range of other things that aren't going to drive an efficiency in an economy.
Right. I mean, some people are going to find privacy problematic. Some people are going to use privacy and anonymity to do bad things. Some people are going to use privacy to buy their wife a birthday present without her finding out about it. Oh, and if you actually want anonymous, untraceable bitcoins for your, drugs and child porn and whatever you're going to throw out there as the bad thing, you know how you're going to get them? You're probably going to mail a prepaid anonymous credit card to some dude on a sketchy internet forum.
Trust is a critical component of any payment system.
Well, except for the ones that are built on trustless distributed paradigms.
So if you think about the idea that all of a sudden you're having cryptocurrencies being manufactured, if you like, on an anonymous computer in an anonymous location, it's completely legitimate to have some concerns about how that might be working.
See, that kind of statement right there is exactly why I think you're using the word trust in a very different way than the rest of us. See, when I say trust, I'm talking about the kind of trust we're supposed to be able to have in large corporations that have a responsibility to protect our financial interests and our privacy. You know, like how we're supposed to be able to trust that you're not going to get fined $6 billion for manipulating your fees. Or like that time in '97 when you guys funded that really bad unscientific study and used that study to get a vice presidential candidate to lobby to have credit card debt removed from bankruptcy filings. That was pretty trustworthy. Oh, I know. What about the time you cut off WikiLeaks payment processing? Oh, or that time when WikiLeaks then told us about how you were having the US government lobby the Russian government to not start their own credit card company to protect your foreign profits? Is that the kind of trust we're talking about? Because see, I think you're talking about the kind of trust where the regulators and the government can trust you to invade our privacy on demand, and where they can trust you to do basically whatever they need so that you're able to maintain your position of financial power. And you know what? Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable admitting that Bitcoin doesn't have that kind of trust. Doesn't require it. Whole system's built on math. You know what you have to trust? Math.
What a regulator wants to do is ensure that there is a fully compliant route to the transaction, that they understand who is making the transaction, who that payment is being made to, and that they have a suitable record so they can ensure that there's prudential control over the system.
And that's the real meat of this entire video. Control. There are people out there who have some control and want more. And this guy stands to make a lot of money by handing that control over to them. The only cost is our privacy and freedoms.
If it's an anonymous transaction, that sounds like a suspicious transaction. Why does somebody need to be anonymous?
Dead horse confirmed. Okay, so you're really latching onto the anonymity thing. I would prefer the term privacy, which is what I'm going to use for the rest of this little spiel, but I actually think you might truly believe that privacy is a bad thing, and that's why I'm going to explain this very, very carefully. Practically every country that isn't a fascist dictatorship has a constitution or a set of laws or something in place to safeguard the privacy of its citizens against the intrusions of its government. Now, those governments that are fascist dictatorships will tell you that the ability to spy on their people is a really, really useful tool for maintaining that regime. So why would practically every country do away with that? I'll tell you why. It's because pretty much everyone agrees that privacy is a fundamental human right, and not just in that sort of feel-good, let's do the right thing kind of way, but in a science kind of way. Behavioral scientists working in the lab with all kinds of animals have determined that practically every animal, no matter how social that species is, requires and seeks out periods of solitude and small group intimacy. Sociologists, which are basically just behavioral psychologists who study the only animal whose language we understand, us, sociologists have confirmed that humans, because of our extensive use of language, seem to treat information privacy in much the same way as animals treat physical privacy. That basically means that taking the ability to keep secrets, no matter how small, away from a human being, has a tendency to turn them into, well, a caged animal.
I certainly don't want anybody mining technology or mining financial services away from my control, particularly if they're going to represent something for me.
And thanks for bringing it all around to control one last time, buddy, because that's really what this entire thing has been about. Control. This guy has a ton of control, and we don't want him to, because we don't trust him. Thanks to Bitcoin, we don't have to.